It's almost like clockwork every single week, whether it's Monday Night Raw, Friday Night SmackDown, or PLE that's happening that same week. Vince McMahon's name is in the news, his name is in the dirt sheets, and Vince McMahon is making creative changes to any of the shows on WWE television. Now, you didn't hear about this before WrestleMania. Ever since that Raw after WrestleMania, which was the lowest rated Monday Night Raw of all time, a show Vince McMahon completely destroyed. All essence of the Raw after WrestleMania gone because Vince McMahon hates the WWE Universe. Ever since that show, it seemingly shows up every single week. Vince McMahon makes late-minute changes. Vince McMahon makes major changes. Vince McMahon makes changes to what happens on the show, what segment happens when. He changes the first half an hour here, the last hour there. No matter what, it's annoying, it's frustrating as a fan, because we were told Vince McMahon was not in charge of creative. We were told that Triple H is the man in charge, but Triple H is not in charge, and he's only in charge by title only. Vince McMahon is still in the weeds. There was a report a few weeks ago that Nick Kahn and Triple H were set to talk about creative late-minute changes with Vince McMahon and hold a private meeting with Vince McMahon. Did this meeting ever take place? When did this meeting happen, you say? It didn't, and it's not going to happen. And there's news on this rumored meeting between Nick Kahn, Triple H, and Vince McMahon. McMahon was backstage last night at Madison Square Garden. That should come to no surprise, or as no surprise to anybody, because MSG is the home of WWE and has been making heavy changes recently to WWE shows. Most of the changes have been made remotely and have featured some advertised matches completely pulled from the show. The rumor was that Triple H and Nick Kahn were planning to ask Vince McMahon to step back from making late heavy changes. The initial rumor was that the meeting was supposed to take place at the June 26th episode of Raw, which Fightful confirmed did not happen. There were longtime sources that heard of the possibility of a meeting, but also said they'd never heard it actually take place. Talent that we spoke to, says Fightful. Usually that type of thing would happen in the middle of the week, they say, instead of directly ahead of Raw, unless it was a talent-directed meeting. Based on what Fightful heard so far, no such meeting has occurred or is planned. Vince McMahon is in a position to where such a meeting could only be a recommendation. Nick Kahn and Triple H cannot force him out, and that will never happen at all. When Fightful asked the WWE official about the rumors, they claimed that there was no truth to it whatsoever and dismissed it as silly. It's worth noting that for quite a while, WWE higher-ups previously dismissed the idea of Vince McMahon returning to creative for quite some time. End quote from Fightful. Now, what really got me was that last little bit there. WWE higher-ups previously dismissed the idea of Vince McMahon returning to creative for quite some time. That's because they knew he was coming back. Those trusted employees who are the right-hand men of Vince McMahon, part of the Vince McMahon administration, they were not going to tell you that he was going to be back in charge because they needed to keep it under wraps. They needed to keep it away from the roster. They needed to keep it away from the general public. They knew he was coming back and did everything in their power to tell you the opposite. So that's that. So when you see something like that, oh yeah, we dismissed the idea. Vince is never coming back. Vince is gone. He's only going to be working at Titan Tower. They knew all along Vince was going to be back, and they kept it very, very under wraps. This meeting is never taking place. This was a hopeful news article a few weeks ago, and now with this report, clearly this meeting is not taking place. Late-minute changes will continue to be made, whether they make sense or not. Whatever Triple H has planned, maybe weeks in advance, is going to get changed because Vince McMahon is that reckless. There was even a report a few weeks ago saying that Triple H is going to try and work around these late-minute changes because he knows they're bullshit by having advertised matches weeks in advance, announced 2-3 weeks out before the show actually takes place, to try and deter Vince McMahon from making changes. Nothing will work. That is not going to work. You don't think Vince McMahon is going to be able to change something, whether it's 2, 3, 4 weeks in advance announced on live television? He doesn't give a shit. He doesn't give a shit if it makes sense. He doesn't give a shit if it continues the storyline, as long as it makes him happy. This reported meeting is never taking place. Why? Do you genuinely think Vince McMahon is going to listen to anybody's fucking recommendation? This is the same guy who, after everything blew up, went away, came back, assumed power. This is the man that told everyone that he wished he didn't listen to everybody that told him to step down because this was going to blow over. And he bought his way out of everything. This is that same guy. You think that Triple H, a guy that has been abused, used, and thrown away by Vince McMahon and Bruce Pritchard, you think Triple H is going to have any say in any way, shape, or form of anything helpful here? No. Nick Kahn. Nick Kahn, honestly, Nick Kahn, if I'm being real with you guys, Nick Kahn is probably, Stephanie was this before she quit, because she knew exactly what was going on. But if there's anyone in this company that could be on our side here, it's Nick Kahn. Nick Kahn has already proven to the company and to us that he's more valuable than Vince McMahon. Nick Kahn is the reason for all these TV deals. Nick Kahn is the reason why WWE is going overseas, international with PLEs. Their biggest gates everywhere. Every fucking news article you read, biggest live gate here. Last night it was the biggest gate in WWE history for an event here in the United States. I mean, this is all because of Nick Kahn. The reason why WWE brought Nick Kahn on board was to sell the company. Nick Kahn put WWE in position to sell the company. Then they took the steps to do that because it was the only way that Vince McMahon was going to assume his power back in the company. So they sold it to Endeavor. Nick Kahn is more valuable than Vince McMahon. If there's one person to force Vince McMahon out and tell Vince McMahon to stop doing something, it is Nick Kahn. But he won't do that. Triple H won't do it. Nick Kahn won't do it because they don't want to step on the old man's toes. And do you genuinely believe that if anything is said in defiance towards Vince McMahon, do you genuinely believe anything's going to get done? If you go to Vince McMahon and tell him to stop doing something, if you go to Vince McMahon and tell him that this doesn't work or that doesn't work, this needs to be changed, the original plan works, Hunter's plans are better, you think Vince McMahon's going to take that and accept that? Vince McMahon would be defiant, even more defiant. Vince McMahon would do everything that he can to make sure his way is the only way. He will double down on everything. Do you genuinely believe if they went to him and told him to stop making changes, he's going to stop making changes? In fact, he'd double and triple the fucking changes. He'd take the show over completely and leave nothing to everybody else. This meeting was a joke. The idea of it was a joke. It was hopeful, but it was a joke at the end of the day. They are scared to talk to Vince McMahon. The meeting, I genuinely believe the meeting was supposed to take place. I genuinely believe that. But the reason why the meeting didn't take place is because they are scared of Vince McMahon. Anything that they do or say to him, it will have an opposite effect. It would actually be worse because at that point, Vince McMahon goes into attack mode and he would be more defiant and double down on basically everything that he's doing now. Simple. We just have to get used to it. We just have to get used to it. Brian Alvarez mentioned on The Observer, I think it was this week, that WWE Creative is somewhat better now than it was last year. Actually, I would agree with that because with Vince McMahon completely running the show with Bruce Pritchard, nothing, and I mean nothing, made sense. But right now, at least we have some dabble of Triple H in there, and Vince McMahon clearly is still running the show. All final decisions are made by Vince McMahon. And I genuinely believe this is going to get worse. As soon as the sale to Endeavor is done, I think Vince McMahon is taking back over Creative 100%. And you're going to hear all of this that you're hearing now. Changes here, this changed, that changed. different direction here. I think it's going to get a lot worse towards the end of the year. Mark my words. It's going to happen. But this meeting, I believe it should have taken place. I believe it would take place. It was supposed to happen, but they are scared of Vince McMahon. WWE was in Madison Square Garden last night, and there is major news coming out of Madison Square Garden. They are considering making major changes to future Madison Square Garden shows. Now, for decades, the entrance ramp was short at Madison Square Garden. There was no big elaborate stage like the other WWE TV events when they were in Madison Square Garden. Several years ago, WWE stopped using the aisle, and it just had its normal setup. Some fans have wondered why the company doesn't do the same setup that they used to do back in the day for MSG, like the old MSG setup. WrestleVault reported earlier this week that when they asked, someone in WWE told them, "It's just not what we do," end quote. Andrew Zarian of the Matt Man podcast reported yesterday that WWE will consider having a smaller stage for the next event at Madison Square Garden. Edge alluded to that in his promo. He pointed over to the crowd where the entrance ramp was, where he was pointing in the crowd. It wasn't this big, same old shit setup that WWE does for every show. It actually gave the shows a little bit of a different vibe when they went to Madison Square Garden because of the short entrance ramp. I always picture John Cena coming out at number 30 in the Royal Rumble, that short entrance ramp when he won the Royal Rumble. Those setups, right? I like that. It gives a different feel inside New York City, inside Madison Square Garden. The only reason why WWE doesn't do it is because they are so stuck in their ways. I feel like with the smaller stage setup, that they probably be able to sell more tickets, which I don't really understand. So the smaller stage setup, in my opinion, would probably yield WWE more ticket sales, and the bigger setup is actually taking away from what the company could do as far as ticket sales is concerned when they go into Madison Square Garden. I don't know why they don't do it. I don't. WWE is just so stuck in their ways that everything that they do, it's got to be the same thing every single place they go, every single show that they do. Nothing really stands out as unique anymore on WWE television. And you even see it with the big arena shows or the stadium shows. They got that long winding ramp. It's the same fucking thing everywhere you go. SummerSlam, long winding ramp. WrestleMania's got the long ramp going down to the ring. Money in the Bank had the long winding ramp. Royal Rumble, long winding ramp. It's the same show. It's basically the same setup with different color coordination and a different fucking event logo. That's all it is. WWE doesn't know how to have fun with their pay-per-view setups anymore, and that's what fans usually miss. I understand not doing it for Raw and SmackDown, but when you get to a premium live event, you should make those shows stand out as special, and there's nothing more special than making the aesthetics pop for those types of shows when it comes to a premium live event. Speaking of WWE PLEs, we now have news on WWE and their major dates for the rest of the year. Obviously, PLEs are the biggest point of interest here. September 2nd, Pittsburgh for WWE Payback. WWE announced in October that they're going to be doing Fastlane at the Gainbridge Fieldhouse in Indiana. And then WWE yesterday announced that they will be doing Survivor Series in Chicago on November 25th. So WWE announced Survivor Series, but the biggest takeaway from that is that WWE did not announce War Games at all. Last year, WWE announced Survivor Series, and it was tagged along with War Games. They announced that ahead of time. What I'm thinking is, are we even getting War Games this year? Did Vince already axe the concept, being that he's back on creative? Because if they did it last year, why wouldn't they do it this year? And I'm already hearing the excuse of, oh, well, let's wait for something to happen on TV so that we can make sense of it being a War Games. Survivor Series should be War Games. This is what we've asked for years. This is what we've wanted for years. And now you're wanting to wait for it to make sense? WWE, this is what people don't understand. You're fucking blind to it. Triple H didn't have to wait to announce War Games. You knew War Games was taking place every single fucking year. And Triple H set up for War Games throughout the year before it even happened. We haven't seen that on TV yet. So why is that? because Triple H is not completely in charge. So for all the excuses out there, oh, let's wait till it makes sense creatively to announce War Games. Meanwhile, he didn't do that last year. He didn't do that last year. He never did it in NXT. So now we're not announcing War Games for Survivor Series. It's great. So I'm on the fucking mindset of, hey, Vince McMahon already axed the concept because it's not his. Triple H showed you how to do Survivor Series, and he got rid of it because he's petty, and it's not a concept that he created. So what are we going to do? We're going to go back to traditional 5-on-5. We're going to go back to champion versus champion, which fucks creative over, right? Yeah, we'll see what happens there. Maybe we'll get War Games. Maybe we won't get War Games, but WWE should have certainly announced War Games for Survivor Series, as it should be the staple for that pay-per-view. And WWE is going back to Saudi Arabia. Survivor Series, November 25th, and WWE will be holding a Saudi show in that month as well on November 4th. According to Brandon Thurston of WrestleNomics, WWE's next Saudi show is planned for Saturday, November 4th. So WWE is going to have a busy November, and we are going to get 2 pay-per-views in the same month, which I'm not really a big fan of, which also lends to the idea that WWE Creative isn't really going into Survivor Series with something that is really good, and they're going to half-ass it like they usually do, because that's what Vince McMahon did. We don't need 2 pay-per-views in the same month, but here we are, and WWE usually can't do good at multitasking creative. So whatever happens at the November 4th Saudi show is probably going to make Survivor Series look kind of blah in theory, because they can't juggle 2 pay-per-views in the same month, and they rarely ever make sense of it. So I'm not looking forward to that, but WWE going back to Saudi on November 4th in what should be a busy November month for WWE. Anyway, guys, I'm getting out of here. If you enjoyed today's news and rumors, please make sure you guys hit that subscribe button. Turn on that bell for notifications. Make sure you guys hit that thumbs up. 1,000 likes is the minimum right here on OTS. I will be back with you guys probably on Monday. I'm going to take the weekend off. Some rest and relaxation. Thank you guys for a great week. If you missed any of the other content, plenty of it to get caught up on. News and rumors with some OTS Extra. We were live on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. If you missed any of those great streams, go and check them out. They are on the homepage right now, and I will see you back right here live on Monday night for Monday Night Raw, right here on Off the Script. I'll see you guys later.